Is this Ton with Wonton Wealth?
There is.
What's up, man?
Joe motherfucking Fairless. How we doing, brother?
Hey, good, good. Yeah, looking forward to this conversation. This is
I
this will be
love it,
this.
brother. Essentially, for everybody listening,
Uh-huh.
it's going to be a little bit untraditional. I mean, if everybody wants to learn who Joe Fairless
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
go out, fucking search Google. There's
yeah.
tens and thousands of pages of Joe Fairless. You can
Right.
listen to your podcast and all that and interviews
Mm-hmm.
to learn about the backstory. So I think I'm just going to shoot from the hip and just start
Yeah,
firing at you if you're okay with that.
yeah. Sitting is the new smoking, so I'm gonna stand and enjoy. Sweet.
All right, so my first question for you, I want to rewind back to your New York days. Hopefully, that doesn't bring up any terrible memories, but I want to bring that up because what I've learned is that you were the biggest, or I'm sorry, the youngest VP at probably one of the largest marketing, advertising firms, whatever. I'm not sure how long you were there, but obviously you're in real estate now, so you transitioned eventually. So
Mm-hmm.
my question is, what was the exact moment that you knew you had to make a leap, and how did you handle the fear of essentially starting over in a whole new field?
Yeah. That's a good one. I'll fact check one thing. I was one of the youngest VPs of the ad agency in New York City, but the ad agency wasn't one of the biggest ones. It was a agency called SS&K, and they were, it was a smaller agency. There were probably, I don't know, like 60 people or something there working there. My guess, somewhere around there. But I had the position that I wanted, that I was working. My major was advertising in college, and I wanted to compete with the best of the best. So that's why I went to New York City. That's the only reason I went to New York City. I didn't know anyone when I moved to New York City. I just moved strictly for the career. My goal was to live there for 5 years and then go back to Dallas, Fort Worth, and jump ahead of everyone else who went directly to Dallas, Fort Worth after college in my career, because then I'd have the New York City experience. But I ended up being there 10 years. And towards the end, it was, I think it was Hurricane Sandy that came through New York in October of 2012. And what Hurricane Sandy did is, it, among many things, for my company, what it did is it knocked out the power of the building. The building that we were in was on Wall Street. And that building, the basement flooded, and all the stuff for the power is in the basement, apparently. And so we were working remote. And I remember working at a sandwich shop with my buddy GCP, who was working at another agency, and he was able to work at home at the time. And I remember like looking out, like as people are walking by, thinking, what is it that they do that they're able to like walk around freely at 11 a.m.? Why aren't they in the office? It was just so foreign to me. Like, how are they able to support themselves and be able to pull that off? And I realized, like, I needed to change. I needed a change. I wasn't fulfilled by what I was doing anymore. So you asked, what was it like transitioning the change from advertising to going to real estate? I look at it as from the perspective of, I was compelled to do something. I run my race in advertising, and I felt like I had made it to as high as I wanted to go in advertising, and that was all I wanted to do. So it was a compelling feeling that I had versus kind of having trepidation, and it was ignorance too. I mean, quite frankly, it was freaking ignorance. I had 4 single family homes at the time. I had one of the homes I refinanced, and that's what got me about $50,000 in my bank account from the refinance. So I had $50,000 in my bank account, and I had 4 homes that were, making like $200 a month until someone moved out, and then it'd be $1,000 I had to pay, $2,000, $3,000 I had to pay. So the homes were really a neutral thing. So, but it really is $50K. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna give myself I'm gonna give myself a chance. I've got $50,000, and I'm gonna see if I can do this thing. And you know, one thing that was eaten into that 50K quickly was Cobra. So I ended up getting laid off. It was beautiful, and people say, hey, it was a mutual thing, and it really wasn't. This wasn't a mutual thing, but I wanted it to happen. So December of 2012, I got called into the HR office, and the agency had just lost a couple big clients. And when you lose clients, big clients in advertising agencies, you got to lay the teams off. So they said, you're going to be laid off. You'll have 2 months we'll pay you through, I think, the end of January. And I thought, man, this is awesome, because I'd planned on quitting in early January, and I wouldn't have had any money, no buyout, obviously, because I would have quit. So I ended up getting money, but I also had to pay into Cobra, and Cobra was like $800 a month, something like that, maybe $900 for a healthy guy. I mean, I didn't have anything going on, and so between Cobra and then also rent was about $1,000. So that's $2,000 a month right there, just in rent and insurance. And looking back, I probably wouldn't have done Cobra. If I do it over again, I would have just rolled the dice on that thing. But it was tough, and it was challenging. And but I didn't feel like I had another option, because I just felt compelled to do it.
Gotcha. So it sounds like, you already, what you mentioned is that you reached the top, and it was kind of getting almost like boring, if you will, right? And throughout our interactions, I feel like you have like an insatiable thirst for games that involved strategy and trying to over strategize your opponent, like chess, Connect Four, what was the other, poker, right?
Yeah.
So you say,
I never thought about it that way, but you're spot on.
Would you say that your drive for the love of the strategy and those type of things kind of push you forward to leaving that position as well?
I would say yes. I think having that thought process certainly was a contributing factor. I'd also say that I was thriving in advertising until that last company. Like I was going up, and up. And then I realized once I got that last company, and I was only at 3 companies, one for 9 months, another for, 6, 7 years, 8 years, and then another for about 9 months, that last one. And I realized that, man, I just don't care about what I'm doing. And so, I mean, that was the true driving force, that and the epiphany of just seeing those people. I remember going outside doing, just walking around during the middle of the day. I remember going to client meetings in a cab, because that's really the only time I took cabs, because it was expense. Otherwise, I walked or took the subway. I remember going to client meetings in New York, just in the client meeting, just driving down. It was a client meeting at J.P. Morgan Chase, and just going to their office in Midtown, and just seeing these people outside. And I was like, how do you experience? How are you experiencing today the way you're experiencing? I'm freaking going to this meeting and about to talk about stuff that I don't care about at all, and like retirement plans for donor advised funds and some other stuff. Like, I didn't care about any of that. Like, how were they able to pull that off? And that was really the true motivation and the pull that got me there.
So I guess with your background in the marketing advertising piece, what would you say is the most beneficial for you as you transition into the real estate side?
I would say looking at things from everybody's perspective. In advertising, if you look at things from your audience's perspective, then you will know how to speak to them. In real estate, if you look at things from your audience perspective, whether it's a tenant, whether it's an investor, whether it's a vendor, whether it's your business partner, you're going to have very productive conversations with them because you're seeing it through their eyes. A really good book, Crucial Conversations, talks about when the stakes are high and opinions vary, establish a mutual purpose.
Gotcha.
Once you establish that mutual purpose, then you can build up from there. And then it just shows a goodwill It shows that you two are on the same page. Always start with the mutual purpose. And so thinking about it that way from my advertising background, but also applying it to what we do now has been beneficial.
So to piggyback on your, the partnerships, and maybe this is something you've already answered, but I wanted to see if there's anything additional to that. With partnerships, it's kind of like a marriage, right? Some people are against it. They want to do shit themselves, buy everything 100%, no partners involved, so that they're the sole decision maker. Mm-hmm. So for people, I guess I kind of have a two-pronged question. For people that are against partnerships, what would you say to that person? And I guess the second part would be, what are the top characteristics or character traits that you see in making the perfect partner?
Mm-hmm. Well, for the person who doesn't believe in partnerships or doesn't want them, maybe you shouldn't do them. It all depends on the individual. I mean, it's unrealistic to say anyone is going to create a business and not have partners, whether it's someone who maybe they don't own any percentage of the company, but if you think about it, your clients are partners, your customers are partners, your vendors are partners. Like, it depends on, how you're defining that. But if we're talking just the black and white, divvying up the ownership of the business, because I think that's what you're talking about, maybe you shouldn't have a partner. Maybe you should be the head lady or the head guy. I mean, that if that works for you, that works for you, and then you hire people underneath you. For me personally, I am inadequate on my own to run a business. I found that out. That's just how I am. I am good at certain things. I am not good at other things. And it's taken me a couple ventures to realize that. But once I realize it, I've embraced it. Like, okay, if I want something to take off and do well, I need people who can complement the areas that I am not good at or I'm average at. So what do I look for in a partner? Well, it's a very it's a very specific question to what I need. So I'll answer it more broadly, and then if you want, I can talk specifics about me personally. More broadly, if someone's looking at, all right, what do I need in a partner? Well, it's very simple. You do three things. One, you identify what skills are required to be successful in this business. What are all the skills? List them out. List all the skills out. What are all the skills successful in this business? That's number one. Number two, you identify which of those skills do you have. And then number three, you go find someone who has those other skills. That's the three-step process to finding the right partner. Certainly, there's compatibility with personalities and integrity alignment and geography, maybe not, depending on how you want to roll. So that's how I would look at it from anyone's perspective. From mine specifically, I have a certain skill sets. There's in relationships. I love learning from people. I love learning about people. I love hearing their stories. I love hearing their journey of how they've overcome obstacles. I find that stuff inspiring. I love asking them about what they got going on, the challenges they're working on. Everyone's got challenges. Everyone's working on stuff that they're in their own head to some capacity. So I love hearing about what they've got going on. But those skills are not the only skills that are needed to have a successful real estate business. Asset management, technical expertise in asset management, acquisitions, finding the right deals, underwriting. I did not have that background. I do not have that background. Therefore, I need to have a partner who had that background. And so that's why I ended up meeting my partner about 10 years ago. What are we, 2025? Yeah, 10 years ago, met my partner and ended up doing good things with Ashcroft Capital.
So it sounds like you are a proponent of the saying, if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together.
For me personally, yeah. Some people, it might not work that way, but for me personally, that's what I've experienced.
Now, I know you're super big on mentorships and coaches and whatnot. I'm sure, I don't know if you still have a coach. I know in the past you've had a coach. You yourself are a coach, and I'm sure there's a ton of non-believers out there as well in terms of, I'm not going to pay X amount of dollar to have somebody tell me what to do. So, I guess my question is, who has been the most impactful mentor in your life, and what's the best piece of advice that they've given you?
I would say most impactful mentor. It's tough.
And
It's tough to narrow it down to one person.
you can't say me because that's cheating.
Dang it. Dang it. All right, I'll go to option B. I would say Trevor McGregor because he reinforced the Tony Robbins thought process that I was studying and I began to be a student on whenever I was introduced to him. And he was with me through challenging times starting the business and helped me navigate things. So I'd say Trevor McGregor, and a lot of you might be familiar with him. He's coached a lot of people since then.
And so when he reinvigorated like the Tony Robbins into you, do you have like a favorite Tony Robbins quote that you kind of live by or just share with
Yeah, I
everybody?
mean, right now I've got on my vision board, which is 3 feet by 4 feet on my wall, printed on my wall. It's also on my computer. It's also on my screen of my phone. It says "Live to Give." Tony Robbins said, "The secret to living is giving." So I'd say ultimately that secret to living is giving, or give to live, live to give to live. It's just like a full circle thing because challenges are a part of life. Scott Peck in the book The Road Less Traveled, one of my favorite books, that's the first sentence. Life is difficult is his first sentence. And once we realize that life is difficult, then we can transcend the thought process of, oh man, this thing happened to, yeah, that's supposed to happen. That's expected. Maybe not. I didn't expect it in this way, but a challenge. That a problem was expected, and then be able to navigate it differently when we expect challenges and understand that that's part of life versus if we don't expect the problems to happen or we don't expect problems to happen. There's just so many issues with that. Yeah, part of our daily routine every night at dinner. My family, we go around and we say, what's our high C? What's our highlight and what's our challenge? And I have a 6-year-old daughter and then my wife. And one thing that I want to reinforce in my daughter is that life is supposed to be challenging. That's it. Like that life's supposed, it's supposed to happen. You fell down, you skinned your knee. Life's supposed to be challenging. And I will admit that one area that I can improve on is scaling the hard nose back a little bit with that and probably, having warm fuzzies because of my thought process of, that's supposed to be challenging. So I need to do a better job of balancing that thought process a bit, especially with the 6-year-old daughter. But overall, what's necessary for all of us, in my opinion, to understand is that life is difficult and it's supposed to be that way. And I just saw a post the other day. I think it was yesterday. I took a screenshot of it. Very rarely do I do screenshots for LinkedIn posts because it's starting to be a bunch of noise, just like Facebook was, which is why I don't do that. But I did see something. It was interesting. It said, I read a book that said marriage is hard, divorce is hard, choose your hard. Obesity is hard. Being fit is hard. Choose your hard. Being in debt is hard. Being financially disciplined is hard. Choose your hard. Starting a business is hard. Working a 9-to-5 job is hard. Choose your hard. Life will never be easy, but you can choose your hard. Choose wisely. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And so that's the type of thought process that I love because it's so applicable to everyday life.
So we mentioned a couple books here, and for those who don't know, obviously Joe is an author of 3 books now, with one coming out soon. Did I get that right, Joe?
Yeah.
3 published, right?
Yep.
And obviously Joe has the Bible on multifamily investing as well as syndications. So you can search for that on Amazon, obviously. But I wanted to talk about the process of writing the book. Obviously, it's one of those that is a marketing piece, correct? But throughout my process of it, I felt, I was doing 40, 50 hours a week for just months straight, maybe even a year straight, and just cranking out words, just trying to edit these things, and it was very monotonous to me. So it was like rubbing a cheese grater against your forehead for 40, 50 hours a week. So, and for those that are thinking about writing a book, right? I don't it's literally not just throwing words on a Word document or a piece of paper. There's a whole different dynamic of it, it's how it looks. In essence, it's you have to figure out kind of what Joe said previously. You have to think about it from another person's perspective, how the reader's going to take this in, and how you can make their learning experience better, right? Or more optimal. So I wanted to ask you, Joe, with the process of the 3 books that you've written and also the one that's in the pipeline, what are some of the challenges that you faced while you were doing all of that? Was there at any point where you're like, dude, I'm done with this shit, just get it out of my face?
Well, so I'm very proud of the syndication book, best ever apartment syndication book. That was a labor of love. That was the 3rd book. The first 2 books, Best Ever Real Estate Investing Advice Volume 1, and then same title Volume 2. Not proud of. Those are so my vision was to have so far on I have a daily podcast. It's been daily for over 3,000 days now. Other people do interviews. I do a tiny bit now, but for the first 1,000, 2,000 days, I did all of them. My vision was to have a book for every 100 episodes that highlighted the top advice from each tranche of 100. So I started with the episodes 1 through 99, which I'll have to look to see if I interviewed my grandma on her 99th, when she was 99 for my 99th episode. I'll have to look to see if she made it in that first book. She ended up living to 107.
That's incredible.
Yeah, in Flint, Michigan, where they got the water, the tainted water, or used to have the tainted water. She lived at 107 in Flint, Michigan. But I interviewed her when she was 99. But if I include her in the book, then I love that book. But it wasn't as it wasn't hard to put together because it's just summarizing interviews. Same with the second book. But the second book's a little sloppier than the first book. That 3rd book, Best Ever Syndication, I poured my heart and soul into that along with Theo Hicks, who co-authored it with me. And that went through many iterations, and it was based off of my client program that I have, where I had taught a lot of people the business, and then I realized, hey, there's some things here that I can just put in a book that will be helpful just at scale. And then I combine that with all the interviews that I'd done and the lessons learned among those interviews. And then Theo's expertise to bring it all together, and then my expertise to help make it sound the way that it should. And then this latest one, it's called Best Ever Bet. It's a short story. It's a fable. About a couple guys, college buddies, who make a bet on which investment's going to do better, and then a bunch of funny stuff happens to them, and it's just entertaining. But the first iteration was not. The first iteration was an encyclopedia, and because the audience is limited partners, right, passive investors, accredited investors, and it was an encyclopedia on passively investing, and it was so boring, like so freaking boring. And it was comprehensive and covered everything, but nobody would have read it. So that hurt my heart to basically scrap the whole thing, incorporate incorporate the main concepts, but then completely redirect it. So then I hired a writer to make it a fable, because I get tripped up on if someone's saying something as a quote, is the parenthesis before, after, or is the quotation marks. I know they're after the quote, but then if it's the end of a sentence, is the period before or after the quotation. I would just get tripped up on too many things. And I've never written like a dialogue type of book. That's just a different beast, and I didn't want to try that. So it is that the Best Ever Bet book, which probably coming out in the next 6 months. That's been a work in progress for about 4 years. And so that puppy has been cooking for a while, and I think it's finally baked. Hopefully it's not overcooked, but it's finally baked, and we're just trying to figure out how to launch it.
Gotcha. Well, the next question I had for you was essentially about, I'll preface this by saying that what I'm most impressed with you is your ability to be in the moment. Mm-hmm. So when we're hanging out, there's no cell phones, the shit's somewhere else, nowhere to be found, not reachable.
Yep.
And your, I guess, discipline, right? So I guess, what does your day look like? Once again, I'll preface this again, that successful people, they tend to follow habits or routines that kind of just go on autopilot, and they do that day in and day out. Obviously, you're disciplined with these things, but on a daily basis, what does your day look like? Do you have some type of routine or habits that you kind of follow every day, or is it just kind of go with the flow?
My alarm over the last 6 months or so has been set for like 7:15ish. So that's when I start I start moving around in bed, and so then I have a liter of water with a scoop of wheatgrass. I've done that for like 15 years. Like a liter of water. That's a lot of water. And a scoop
Holy
of
shit.
wheatgrass. Yeah. And then I work out in the morning. Now I finally cracked the code on my fitness. I was at 187 today, and a year and a half ago I was at 206.
Damn.
Year
Good
and a
work,
half ago
brother.
I was at 206. Last year my goal was to be under 195 by the 15th of every month. I hit it all 12 months. This year my goal is to be under 190 or under, 10 out of 12 months. I missed February. Yeah, I missed February, but I hit January and March, and I'm good now. I just need to figure out how I was going to get that baseline down. And how I did it was I mixed in weights with my cardio.
Love it.
Yeah, and all I do is I go into ChatGPT and I say, here's the equipment that I've got access to. I do a 10-minute workout. Create a 10-minute workout, and ultimately ends up being 20. But create a 10-minute workout, and so I do 2 rounds of 5 different exercises, and I work out a different muscle group each day. And before I do that, I walk 2 miles on the treadmill at a 4.0 speed, so 15-minute mile pace. And then I make sure I get 5 miles total in for the day. Doesn't have to be on the treadmill. And that's been awesome to see the progress, and it's sustainable too. So I also have one dessert day a week. That's it. I can eat dessert on one day. Unless I'm on vacation, then I'll have some leeway there. But one dessert day a week. And you mentioned the phone stuff. The phone stays in my office at night. It's not in the bedroom. When I'm hanging out with friends, as you mentioned, when we're hanging out, unless I'm changing the music, and I hate to do that because then I get on my phone. Unless I'm changing music, I'm not on my phone. I'm focused on whatever bullshit you're saying, or trying to call you out on whatever you're saying. But I'm focused on the conversation. I'm focused on the individuals, and I love that. And it honestly, it makes me sad when I see people just together but on their phones. That is the predominant emotion that comes to the surface with me for whatever reason. I don't know. There's something psychologically there, but it just makes me sad. And I respect the time that we have together too much to be a fucking zombie.
It's actually pretty annoying too. Like if you're out like just one-on-one, or maybe a group of people, and you're talking about a story or whatever, and everybody's on their fucking phone, it's like, do you even want to listen to what I'm saying, or am I wasting your time now?
And I remember in high school, I think it was high school. No, maybe it was college, but I remember riding with my dad, and he would be talking, and then I had the phone, and I'd be doing something. He said, "Oh, I'll wait," and it always annoyed me as a kid. As a college student, it always annoyed me. Well, why is he saying, "Oh wait, no, I can do both. I'm good." Now I see it. Now I see the
Yeah.
perspective. So I am absolutely someone who's come from the other side. Like, I get that, but now I don't. And you won't find me in the presence of others during a conversation being on my phone. It won't be a thing.
Love that. Love that. I wanted to take it to the Best Ever conference now because that was actually something that just happened recently. What were we in March? So last month. Best Ever has gone for 9 years now. Is that right?
Yes.
9, 10, whatever it is.
Nine.
But
Nine.
9.
Next year will be
So
10.
right, all right. So you have consecutively done 9 years of keynotes. So the public speaking factor. Any public speaking in and of itself can be terrifying. You know, you're going up there, you're nervous, got the jitters, all that shit. What did you do in order to prepare to be so good at public speaking and being so comfortable in front of thousands of people at this conference?
I would say 3 things. One is just being prepared, knowing my material in and out. 2 is when I was in New York, I wanted to be better at public speaking, so I took a improv class. I got in there, and then they said, "Why are you here?" I told them why, and they said, "Well, if you ever, yeah, this is not as challenging because if we give you the stapler on stage, the audience will know that this is the first time you're seeing the stapler, so they'll cut you some slack, right? What do you say? Someone hand me a stapler, right?" However, stand-up comedy, the audience comes in expecting that you're prepared, expecting to laugh every 7 seconds. So if you want to get better at public speaking, go do stand-up comedy. I said, okay, fine. So then I took a class and a course on stand-up comedy. And this is while I had my full-time job in advertising. So I took a course on that. And then it culminated with me performing at Gotham Comedy Club in New York City. And technically, Jim Gaffigan, have you ever heard of him, Jim Gaffigan?
Yeah.
He opened up for me, technically. He went on stage before I went on stage, technically speaking,
Hell yeah.
that night. Yeah, so I can say Jim Gaffigan opened up for me at Gotham Comedy Club. And so that was the second thing I did. By the way, I had a very friendly audience, so everyone laughed because you had to bring your friends to, I think, go on stage. But then I tried it again because I thought, oh man, I am a funny dude. Not only did nobody laugh, but literally that club that I did my performance at shut down like a week later.
Oh no.
So I made it go out of business. It literally is not existent anymore. So
Boy.
that was the second thing. And then the third thing I did is I didn't do it this year, but I've done it so many years in the past. It's just ingrained is Tony Robbins' top presentation tips video. It's about an hour-long video. He's in a Hawaiian, like, sleeveless shirt, and he's 25 years old, and it's old school, recorded on a VCR, but they put it on YouTube, and he has some really good tips in there about how he prowls around, the audience. He wants the audience to be on their seat, on the edge a little bit, in case he picks on them. Not in a bad way, but in case he selects them. And you'll notice, and when I talk, I'm prowling. If you don't raise your hand and no one else does, I might call on you, which I did in this keynote. No one wanted to. I asked who has some muscles around here, and no one raised their hand. And so I picked on a guy who had some muscles, and fortunately, he didn't beat me up after I picked on him. And then I made a joke about him in all good nature, but he was a good sport about it. So that video has some really good tips. And another one that really stands out is, what do you really love and respect about your audience? Because if you really respect, and less about the love, what do you really respect about your audience? Because if you can truly channel that respect for them, then you know that you have a message that you need to deliver to them because you respect them so much and you want to help them out. So it's less about what do I say, or it's less about how I say it. It's more about just what's the main message I want to communicate to them. And there's many different ways to go about getting to that end point. But if you know the destination, then you can find different ways during the presentation to get to that destination.
Gotcha. I have 1 or 2 questions left, depending on how much time you got.
Sure.
They're stumpers, not really, but Back in Colorado, you hit me with a question, and I was like, damn, I didn't never really thought about that. Like, I think the question was, if you had to travel back in time to one moment in history and witness the entire thing, what would it be?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a history guy, so I probably gave you some half-ass answer. But my question to you would be, what is the one thing that you wish you could change about yourself?
That's a tricky one because if I wish I could change it, then I would work on changing it already. And I'm always looking to improve. Like my goal this year is to read 19 books, and I've already read 5 so far.
Damn.
Rounding the corner to 6. I'd say one thing that I don't know if I can change it, so that's why I would include this as the response to this question. Otherwise, I'd be working on changing it. I do a really good job of whenever I am learning something, if I'm immersed in something, then it's tough to beat me. Because if I'm immersed in it, then I'm all in, and it's my world. But then if I leave that world and I go work on something else, then I don't retain as much of that as much of it as perhaps other people might. Like I used to be big into Scrabble. I used to go to Washington Square Park, Northwest Corner, and watch the guys who play Scrabble. I never played, but I used to watch them. I read the book Word Wars. I watched, which is a good book, by the way, Word Wars, and I watched a documentary. That's a pretty interesting. That's a fun one. Bunch of interesting dudes who do Scrabble professionally. But now I would be terrible at Scrabble. However, at that time, I had all the 2-letter and maybe 3-letter acceptable words memorized. Or acceptable Q words memorized. I knew how to play the Q. So I would like to retain that more as I move on to something else. That would be cool to change.
Retain. I think a lot of people share that same issue because, well, me in particular, I'm the same way. I get good at something for maybe a month or so, and then I leave it, just complete shit again. Golf in particular. My last question for you would be, if you had to start over at 0, nothing, what would you need to do in order to get back to where you are today?
Depends on the circumstances. You gotta give me a little bit more of a circumstance because
you have all the knowledge.
Okay.
You have, let's say, no assets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say you don't have the relationship you've built over the past 10 years.
Okay. But I've got a home, I've got a computer and internet, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I'd go back to the well. I'd start interviewing people. I'd start building those relationships one by one. I do 2 interviews a day. If at this point because I'm 42 now, so but when I started the podcast, I was not 42. I don't know, however age I was. So I've need to hurry up and do it a little bit faster than I did before. So I would do 2 interviews a day, and I'd figure out maybe a slightly different format, maybe a little shorter format. And then here's what I would do differently on that though. I'd have a community which we have now, Best Ever CRE community. You can download it on just wherever you download apps. What I would do now is I'd make sure the guests that I'm bringing on are being interviewed through that community, and people can watch it through the community. So I would build a community along the way, whereas my first go around with the 3,000 plus interviews, it was just kind of one-off, like, hey, interview this guest, and there was no one place for them all to mingle and get to know each other along with the listeners. Now we have that. Would have been nice if we created it day one, if I created it day one.
What would you say, like, with the biggest benefit is obviously everybody kind of commingling within an ecosystem, right? But are there any ancillary benefits to that?
It's a curated community, so not everyone can join. You have to have done at least 2 deals as a general partner in commercial real estate, or you have to at least invested in 1 deal as a limited partner.
Gotcha.
Therefore, it elevates the conversation. It's a more refined conversation. We're not talking about how do I make my first $10,000 in commercial real estate or how do I wholesale homes. We're only talking about commercial real estate with experienced individuals. And as the community grows, we're going to create a regional meetups and then build that out so that the Best Ever community members can meet throughout the year, not just once a year in Salt Lake City when we do the big event.
Gotcha. I've seen it blossom currently, and I think there's big things to come from it. It's pretty cool, and I think Ann has brought in a lot of effort and energy to it. So I'm excited to see where it ends up or as it continues to grow.
Yeah, and previously it was a paid community, and it just didn't make sense to do it. So we're actually opening it up. That hasn't been announced yet, but announcing it now. We're opening it up so it's a free community, but you still have to qualify. You still have to have that experience. If you don't, then go get it and then join. But it will now be a free community for all experienced commercial real estate investors to participate in.
Awesome. Well, Joe, I know I took up a lot of your time already over the 40 minutes you mentioned.
I really enjoy talking to you, your friendship. We've known each other for a while. I've gone on a couple vacations together. And what you do, your drive, your tenacity is impressive, and your heart too.
Appreciate you, brother.
So it's impressive. I always enjoy being around you and then hearing what you got going on.
Love it, brother. I appreciate that. But yeah, hoping to catch you soon in person, and then eventually for another episode of Wonton Wealth.
All right, sounds good.
Awesome. See you, brother.
Thanks.